It is semi-finals time at the Australian Open, which means it's time for me to try some predictions. Here is your women's semi-finals preview. Hey guys, welcome back to the tennis vlog. Hit subscribe if you wish to see me embarrass myself more often. Of the 128 players in the original women's draw at the Australian Open, only 4 remain, and the records of those 4 on the current season mean that we could be in for a really good showdown in both matches. 3 of the women still in contention, Simona Halep, Angelique Kerber and Elise Mertens, won their opening title of the season before coming to Melbourne, so have yet to drop a match this year. And Caroline Wozniacki reached the final of the first event she contested, which leaves her with a 9 wins to 1 loss record now, and the others with 10 love records. It is not often, especially on the women's tour, that you would get 4 players who played super well before a major event and then went deep at the tournament, so really impressive stuff. Anyway, I had better get on to previewing before I get a time violation and have to go to the tournament office. So in our first semi-final, we have world number 2 Caroline Wozniacki against our surprise package Elise Mertens, the world number 37. Since the 2013 edition of the event, the Australian Open has had a kind of unwritten rule where there will be one unexpected semi-finalist in the women's event at every year. This has happened every year since 2013, starting with Sloane Stephens, going through Eugenie Bouchard, Madison Keys, Johanna Konta, Coco Vandeweghe last year, and this year it is Elise Mertens. All of these contenders, you might realise, have been fairly young. So the Australian Open semis have really been pretty good for highlighting stars of the near future. Elise Mertens definitely wasn't a well-known name ahead of this season, but if you had watched her closely last year, you could see that the 22-year-old Belgian had a lot of promise. She played Venus Williams twice in the majors last season, and it was when she competed against the American in the Wimbledon first round that I really saw something about her that made me think she could really come through in the near future. While she has a game that translates well to all surfaces, she does play very well on a faster court. She strikes a good shot off both the forehand and the backhand. She also has a great slice off both the forehand and backhand wing, which is more of a rarity in the game, that you see someone actually going for the slice when they're not really pushed into a massively defensive position, but Mertens can really use it to her advantage off both sides. Last year, Mertens was really solid. She won the Hobart International to open her season, which is a title she defended this year ahead of the Australian Open, but last year she didn't get to play the Australian Open because in winning her first title, she had to pull out of the qualifying events. The one thing about Mertens last year was that while you could tell she was making progress, she wasn't getting the big wins to back that up. She actually only beat 2 top 20 players in the entirety of last season, and both of those wins came at Fed Cup, so they didn't really count for anything in terms of ranking points and the like. And looking at her run to the semi-finals in Australia, you can see the streak continuing. Up until the quarter-finals, she hadn't beaten anyone ranked higher than number 23 seed Daria Gavrilova. However, she hasn't dropped a set, and that now includes a win over number 4 seed Elina Svitolina, who was one of the title favourites heading into Melbourne. After winning all 3 7-5 sets she played on the way to the semis, and the only tie-break that she competed in, Mertens was ruthless in her defeat of Svitolina, only allowing her to get 4 games. True, the Ukrainian was injured, but it can actually be harder to face an injured player, a good injured player, knowing that you have this great opportunity before you on a stage that Mertens had never been in before. She'd never made a Grand Slam quarter-final. We move across to Wozniacki meanwhile, and it's a very different story. Wozniacki is 27 and still without a Grand Slam title. However, she has spent a good 2 years atop the world rankings. Despite her many accomplishments and all her WTA titles and 2 Grand Slam finals, Wozniacki has never reached a major final outside of New York, which is where the US Open is held. She reached the US Open final in 2009 and 2014, losing to Kim Clijsters and Serena Williams respectively, and in each of those clashes she failed to win a single set. But the Wozniacki we are watching now is a different player to the one we saw then. She may not be at the top of the rankings anymore, but she has come close to the number 1 ranking thanks to an unexpected WTA Finals win at the end of last season. After winning the WTA Finals, her biggest title to date, Wozniacki definitely seems a more confident player, and that is showing in her game. And when you look at her road to the last 4, honestly, it doesn't look that impressive for a Grand Slam main draw. However, she has come back from the brink in round 2 against Jana Fett. She was 5-1 and 30-love down before sensing her opponent tightening and taking advantage, keeping so calm in order to do that and winning that set 7-5. She also thrashed Wimbledon semi-finalist Magdalena Rybarikova in the 4th round, and in the quarter-finals she overcame a lapse in concentration and a comeback from Carla Suarez-Navarro in order to progress. To me, that win over Suarez-Navarro is particularly interesting because Wozniacki could easily have won that clash in straight sets. She rolled through the opener, had a match point in the second set on the return, really scrambled during that point, but Suarez-Navarro came through and took the tiebreak, and Wozniacki did wobble at the end of that set. However, in the 3rd set she really pulled it together, showed her experience, showed her confidence. And I almost think that now that Wozniacki has had these wobbles ahead of the semi-finals, when she sees the opportunity presented in front of her there, she's not going to bottle. With all the experience she's had on tour and all the big matches she's played, she will know that there is no room for any lapse in concentration, no room for unnecessary errors. Looking at the general head-to-head now between Wozniacki and Mertens, they've only met once before, and that came last year. However, it was on the slower surface of clay. Interestingly, that match went to 3 sets before Mertens lost, and given Wozniacki's counterpunching game style, you have to think that that is a better fit to Wozniacki's game than to Mertens. So take them away from that surface, and if that match was close and Mertens nearly took it, then what could happen here? Also, interestingly enough, that match was a semi-final. However, it was not a Grand Slam semi-final, and this is a stage that Mertens isn't used to. It may mean nothing at all, but I've noticed that of the 5 players who have reached the Australian Open semi-finals in previous years and made their breakthrough there, none of those 5 players have progressed beyond the last 4. All of them have fallen in the semis. So when you look at Mertens and see that she's playing an experienced opponent in Wozniacki, someone who's looking at a bigger opportunity probably to win a major than she's ever had before. Yes, an unseeded Ostapenko won the French Open last year, but Mertens is a bit different to Ostapenko. Ostapenko had been highlighted as a junior, she'd been talked about as she was on the rise. Mertens has come through as a bit of a late bloomer. Given the maturity she has shown this fortnight and her form beforehand, I was actually going to predict Mertens to win this match. However, I don't want to overlook Wozniacki's experience and her ability to take advantage of this opportunity. I would also be interested to see how Mertens would cope with losing a set, because so far that's something she hasn't had to deal with, and playing against a player of Wozniacki's caliber, it's more likely to happen. I'm going to go with what I think is playing it safe and predict Wozniacki to win in 3 sets in this semi-final. So Caroline Wozniacki in 3 sets. And now moving on to the second semi-final, which has all the potential to be the match of the tournament, but now probably won't be because of what I said about the second 2 quarterfinals, which didn't really follow through with what I suggested. This one is between world number 1 Simona Halep and world number 2 Angelique Kerber. However, this ranking does not do justice to how Kerber, the 2016 champion, is playing, because both women are competing like top 5 players right now. Halep had little trouble with number 6 seed Karolina Pliskova coming through that quarterfinal collision 6-3, 6-2, and Kerber absolutely smashed US Open finalist Madison Keys 6-1, 6-2. This one is ridiculously hard to call because not only are both women playing incredibly well, both of them have a similar counterpunching game style. Kerber has won 2 slams and looks to have recaptured the form that got her to those titles, and Halep is desperately searching for her maiden major title with a great team of people around her. She has a brilliant competitive nature. Her determination has already seen her through a 15-13 in the decider win over Lauren Davis, and we're going to look at her run to the semi-finals now. That was definitely the toughest match for Halep so far, against 5'2" American Davis. A lot of tough baseline rallying. She had to serve for the match 4 times before she eventually got it done. I have to say, of all the women to make it to the last 4, on paper, Halep's definitely looks the most impressive. Destiny Aeva, who she beat in round 1, is a very promising Australian rising star. Eugenie Bouchard is not in good form, but she is a former Wimbledon finalist. She raises her game against the best players, and Halep still thrashed her on a bad ankle as well in that match, and that injury for Halep was really a concern at the beginning of the tournament after she fell during her first round match, but it is her determination that has seen her through to this stage where hardly anyone is talking about that anymore. Round 4, Naomi Osaka, one of the WTA's brightest rising stars, massive serve, massive ground strokes, and Halep handled that one well, and then another match against another great power player, Pliskova, just absolutely took that in her stride by the same scoreline that she'd beaten Osaka. Kerber, meanwhile, has come through quite a draw herself. It's almost quite disappointing to me that Kerber and Halep aren't meeting in the final because of the level of tennis they're playing right now and because of all the opponents they've come through to get this far. Annalena Freidsom in round 1 wasn't so much trouble for Kerber. She's still coming back from injury and this was her first top-level match in some time, so Kerber handled that one pretty easily. Donna Vekic in the second round, meanwhile, was a different challenge because when Vekic is on, she scorches those lines with flat, lethal ground strokes. Vekic, who has been described as a young Maria Sharapova before, really set Kerber up well for a clash with the real Sharapova, and maybe that had something to do with how quickly she beat her because she absolutely hammered her. 6-1, 6-3. Kerber frankly didn't let Sharapova play in that match, she was all over her. Round 4 was really the only one in which Kerber found herself in any trouble when she was playing Su Wai-Shea of Chinese Taipei. Her opponent was having a brilliant fortnight with her double-handed forehand and backhand. She'd already taken out 2 top players, including Garbiñe Muguruza, and Kerber really dug deep to pull that one out. In the biggest moment she was there, she clicked, she came through, and that's what champions do. Cliché, I know, but it's true. And on a level with her annihilation of Sharapova was Kerber's swift defeat of Keys. When Keys is on, she's got a brilliant serve. She has real raw power in her ground strokes that most people struggle to match. Now, the interesting thing about both Kerber and Halep is that while they are very much more of the counterpunching game style, both of them turned on an attacking game of tennis in order to blast Pliskova and Keys out of the tournament. Both of them were stepping into the court, going for winners, really making their move, and really imposing themselves upon their opponents. There are a number of ways to do this through timing, and both players are full of talent in that respect. We've seen that Kerber has had little trouble with 2 especially fiery power players in this tournament so far, and Halep in the past has wiped Serena Williams off the court, which is the toughest task in tennis. When it comes to predicting, this one is seriously hard. Kerber has the angle, she has the experience of this particular tournament. Halep is playing the Australian Open semis for the first time, like Wozniacki and Mertens. While Kerber has the insane angles and the real confidence right now, Halep has Darren Cahill, her Australian coach. Her partnership with Cahill has been absolutely amazing. It's changed her attitude, it's really helped her achieve her best results on the court, and with him in her corner and both of them working in such a great way, I find it difficult to see either of these 2 players losing. Given that Kerber had played so well before the event, and the players that play well usually lose ahead of winning the trophy, I was apprehensive to pick her to win the tournament. However, all 4 women in the semis have been playing consistent tennis lately, so there is every chance that Kerber could win the tournament. Halep has had so many tough Grand Slam losses, and you've just got to wonder with her determination and with her tennis ability, how many tough Grand Slam losses can one take before they actually manage to break through. Tempted as I am to pick Halep just for the purpose of having to make a prediction for this video, because otherwise I know you'll be unhappy, I'm going to go with Angelique Kerber to make the final. And even though I was originally going to pick straight sets endings for both of these clashes, I'm going to pick her to do it in 3 sets because I just think this is such a close one to call. And I mean, if I don't know which player to choose, then the best thing to do is to pick 3 sets. Just remember, I have all bases covered. I've basically said a reason for every single player getting through, so can't lose. So there are my predictions for the women's semi-finals. Thank you for watching. Be sure to let me know what you thought in the comment section and also your own predictions. Which 2 players do you think will make the final? As much as I love the Australian Open, they can be a little weird, and for some reason they always schedule one of the men's semi-finals on the same day as the 2 women's semi-finals, meaning that you have one men's semi one day and the next one the day after, which doesn't even seem really fair, but there you go. So as far as video previews go, I won't be doing Kyle Edmund versus Marin Cilic. However, I will try and get a video up previewing and predicting Roger Federer versus Hyun Chung. Well, there you go. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you at the next video.